Now what I want to do is to ask and answer another question, and that is, well, why do you need a spiritual philosophy? Why do you need a religion? All peoples have always created spiritual concepts. Why? And I want to answer it in terms of what it is that a spiritual philosophy should do for us. First of all, it presents to us our values as imperatives. That is, it says to us that we don't have a choice but to act in a certain way. It's not like we're choosing to do that, but something is saying, you have to do that. That's the way you have to be. That's the way you have to act, because that's the right way to do it. And that's what your spiritual philosophy or your religion does for you. It also, at the same time, a part of that is that it sanctions the culture. Therefore, your spiritual philosophy is particular and not universal. Now, I know this may sound strange and be an unpopular position, but I think it's accurate. That is, that my goddesses, gods, spirits, Orisha, energies, forces, beliefs, speak to me in a very special way. That is, they say something about my special experience. And me, in this context, is we. It is the collective. Why? Because we are African. And that is what me means when we are African. Very important to keep in mind. Secondly, our spiritual thought, or religious practice, if you will, must put our behavior, our actions, in tune with what we perceive to be a deeper, higher, ultimate truth. Okay? In tune with an eternal reality, what we perceive to be an eternal reality. On the other hand, we always have the circle. It always comes back the other way. Our spiritual conceptions should be able to bring divine truth closer to us. That is, it should be able to bring divine truth onto the plane of human existence and human reality. Another thing that happens through a spiritual philosophy is that it gives us a spiritual awareness, a sense of order that we use to defeat the chaos that we experience around us. Confusion, crisis. We know there are many times in our lives where we experience crisis. Death of somebody close to us. What we perceive to be as failure can bring crisis into our lives. Financial crisis, or the loss of a friendship. You can think of other examples. But these are times when we lose our way because everything seems to be going wrong. We don't have the answers anymore. Okay? It's difficult for us to determine which is the right way to go. What's the correct thing to do? We lose our way. What our spiritual ideology does for us, or should do for us, is that it should provide a systematic way of thinking, which in the first place acts to prevent this breakdown that we experience. But then if we do experience a breakdown or a crisis, it enables us to regain vision, to reestablish a feeling of hope and clarity and direction. It also should relieve suffering for us. This is why we need spiritual conceptions. And we all are going to have suffering, some time of suffering in our lives. It should help to make that suffering bearable. Another thing that our religious or our spiritual philosophy should do is that it should provide us with a system of symbols. And those symbols become powerful symbols because they create in us feelings which have such energy that it can motivate us to do special things. That is, they become a basis for commitment. And that commitment leads to fulfillment, to a sense of fulfillment. So that our sacred symbols, presented to us by our spiritual philosophy or ideology, presents our culture, our history, our values, our beliefs, and our identity to us in a very special way. And the way in which all of this is presented to us causes us to love them, to honor them, and to revere them. The things that I'm mentioning now, I'd like you to keep in mind so that as we talk specifically about ancestor communion, we can go back and see, well, how do they relate to these things? Which religion, if you want to call it that, or spiritual philosophy should do. Another thing that it should do is that it should allow us to achieve continuity of meaning. That is, by transcending, that is, moving beyond the finite moral existence that we experience as human beings, we are able to be put in touch with, let's say, the eternal aspect of the universe, or the eternal aspect of ourselves. And that's the same thing. The eternal aspect of the universe and the eternal aspect of ourselves, they are one. And I'll explain that later. Well, I wanted to give some examples from specific African philosophies. I think I might try to hold off on that because if I do that, it's going to take me too long. But we can do it later. Now, another thing that a spiritual philosophy should do, and that is that the goals that it presents should not be separate from our political goals as a people. Now, that may be a very controversial point, but for me it is absolutely essential. Now, if these goals were separate, then that could cause conflict. That is, it could lead to conflicting commitments. We're talking, after all, about commitment. We're talking about the deepest kind of commitment that human beings can feel. Okay, so that these two areas, I'm saying, should be compatible, and I'm saying more, they should be one. And I hope to show you how that can happen. Your spiritual philosophy should reaffirm your existence. Your existence. We define ourselves collectively as Africans. So the philosophy has got to reaffirm our existence and our definition as a people, as a family, as a community, and as a nation. If a religion or a spiritual philosophy does not affirm your existence as a cultural being, then it is inadequate. It is not working properly for you. If a religion contradicts your cultural identity and seeks to separate separate you from your culture by denying that culture, then it's not right for you.
I think so.
And lastly, a religion or a spiritual philosophy must build a national consciousness. That's what religion does. And we've got to understand that.